Today's little tutorial is wire wrapping. Now it's one of the things that I consider my recycle crafts. It doesn't have to be, but it's how I prefer to do it. I mainly use a lot of old bangles that I get from charity shops. They're often sold off in huge numbers for pennies. For example, you get these because people often just discard them in huge numbers. A lot you find used for weddings, and then they're just thrown away. These are not expensive ones, they're not gold or silver, they're just the common metal ones. You can use all sorts, even if they're quite small, it doesn't matter. Even some of these that are quite small and probably wouldn't fit over a normal wrist, an adult wrist, they can be used. And what I do is I wire wrap them and turn them into bracelets or pendants or anything. But I turn them into recycled jewellery. Now that is simply two of the bangles, and they're cut and bent backwards, and then you start to wrap them. As you can see, you can do lots of different types of things with them, and that's three, I think, 3 bangles wrapped with some beads and still left as a bangle in the middle, but twisted at the top just to make a little bit of decorative shape. That's a single bangle just with some beads threaded in, and again I've opened this one so it can fit different sized wrists. I mean, I have particularly large hands, so I do struggle to get some of them over, so that can basically be on any sized wrist or even around the arm. This one is a little bit different. It's a couple of bangles and it's wire woven instead to make it look like, it almost looks like seagrass. Again, it's just some sparkly beads, but I also did a couple of earrings to go with it, and this is just some thin bangle bent into a different shape with some sparkly beads in to match the bracelet, and a little hook. So from that point of view, it's quite cheap. You can buy the wire quite cheaply. I do get this from a silver supplier if I want to do the silver ones, if I want to do something that people can wear without having any problems, because it's guaranteed that it doesn't affect your skin. But I also do use a lot of copper wire that I recycle from old leads, old TV leads. I mean, this is thin copper wire, so but it's usually sort of that kind of thickness. The only thing I would say is just be aware, if you're using recycled copper wire, that it can react with people's skin. It can turn your skin green. So I usually use it and use something else underneath it. So if, for example, I was doing a bangle, it doesn't mean I wouldn't use the copper wire, but it means I would line it with something else, so that when it fitted over people's wrists, the copper wire didn't necessarily touch the skin, because copper does react quite badly with some people's skin. So how do I do it? Okay, so you start with some cheap bangles, and what I usually do is I cut them to make it easier. You don't have to, but I just find it easier if I've got something I can straighten out to work with. And depending on the kind of wire I'm using, So if you've got, say, 2 together, now I would say always use quite short pieces of wire. Because one of the issues is going to be it's going to fly around, and as you're wrapping what you're doing, the end of the wire will be flying around. Please always be aware that it is a danger to your eyesight. I always wear glasses anyway, but I usually, if I'm using wire a lot, I wear something across my eyes. And you literally just start to bind the two together. Okay, and this is why you need something quite close. Okay, so you try and keep them flat. I usually try and keep them flat. And the little tail you hold down with one thumb, and then you start to bind it. And I usually find that you do it quite tightly. What you can do is you can keep pushing it together to get it a little bit closer. And you bind. Okay. And then pull it tight, push it together, flatten it back down, and you can see it's starting to, it will look a little wide when you first start it because you keep pushing it back together. Then you push it back together and you pull it tight and you flatten it down. You make sure it's not starting to go side by side. It's flat. So I'll get that. Okay, and that's how you start to wire wrap. You then do the whole thing. If you're just making a bangle, just a simple one, you just keep doing it round. If you've got 2 or 3 bangles together, you decide what's going to happen with them. So once you've got it together, you'd start winding these round so that they make the pattern. And that's really as simple as it is. It is a very eco-friendly craft. And it's very simple once you get going. You do need to practice. I won't say it's a grade 1 easy access craft. I would suggest it's not one of the ones suitable for young children because of the danger of the wire. You can use something other than wire. You could do the same sort of thing and use something else. But if you're using wire, I would suggest a certain amount of caution for young children because of the way this bit constantly waves in your face. It's very easy for them to get hurt. It is also, I should say, very difficult on the fingers. It can make your fingers very sore, particularly when you first start to do it, and I would suggest that you do it in short bursts, put it down, go back to it. Like a lot of things, when your hands become more used to it, you can do it for longer. But it is quite tough on the hands and it is quite tough on the skin. But it is a huge amount of fun to do. And when you can turn basically rubbish into something as pretty as that, then I think it's worth it. I quite enjoy wire wrapping. I do it in moderation because it is a bit tough on the fingers. But so that's today's wire wrapping.